A very good evening, guys. In the previous class, we completed the chapter definition. As I mentioned, it was a very small chapter. We finished off in 2 sessions. But please read those definitions because as I mentioned, there were only 5. In fact, there are 6. I told you why we did not do the 6th one. And as I told you, every college, they ask at least 2 out of these 5. So it was not only important from exam point of view, but also from understanding the further chapters of taxation, what we are going to do from now onwards. Because those 5 definition, the words what we have used or we have seen, if you see almost every lecture some or the other word will keep on coming. Okay, so that was the chapter definitions. Now we take one of the most important and the most scoring chapter of the syllabus of direct tax, that is basis of charge. The next chapter, that is basis of charge. Now listen, what do you mean by basis of charge? We discussed the very first day your subject direct tax, and in that what you will have in your syllabus is income tax. What is income tax? Income tax is the tax which you pay on your income. As I told you, under the Income Tax Act, your income which is to be taxed is classified in 5 categories. Which are those 5 categories? And there are certain income which won't be taxed, that we will see in the next class and in the coming lectures. I am not getting into that at this particular stage. So there are few incomes which will be fully exempt. You don't have to pay tax, and there are certain incomes where tax has to be paid and they have to be classified in 5 categories. So those categories we will see in the second part of this chapter. As I told you initially, I am not getting into that. Now guys, listen. Income tax is the tax on income what you earn. Now when you earn the income, which income is to be charged? Apart from taxing under which head? First thing is, it would depend upon the residential status of the assessee. What is assessee? We have seen in the previous session. So which income would be taxed at what level? For that, first we need to know the residential status of the person, the residential status of the assessee. So basis of charge means on what basis. Understand the name of the chapter. Basis of charge means under what basis the income will be charged to the assessee. Under what basis the income will be charged to the assessee. Now this chapter is further divided in 2 parts. First part, what I am starting today, that is residential status, and the second part, scope of total income. Now both are interconnected. To do the second part, first I should know the first part, because the taxability of the second part would depend upon the residential status. Not only on the second part, but future from here onwards, whatever practical sums we are doing, taxability would depend upon residential status. Of course, you all are at undergrad level, so the level is not high, it's pure basic. But then too, you should be aware of the basic provisions for determining the residential status of assessee. Now see, what do you mean by residential status? You know, you all must have heard this word, na? Bachpan se small, many all are kids, NR, NRI, non-resident. So normally what happens, as a layman, when we think of resident, we think of 2 things, resident, non-resident. That classification is there. In addition to that, there is some advanced classification also. So before I get into that, the first part of this chapter is residential status. We have to find out the residential status of the assessee of the person. Now we discussed on the very first day when we were discussing the definition of person, there are different categories. So same way here, every person के लिए to identify his residential status, there are different categories. Now guys, as far as your syllabus is concerned, your undergrad level ka syllabus is concerned, you have only two things, that is residential status of an individual and residential status of HUF. This is as far as the sums are concerned. But theory mein, you have basic theory for all the type of assessees. But when it comes to solving practical sums for your syllabus, you have only two parts, residential status of individual and residential status of HUF. 95% of the sums are on the first part, that is residential status of individual. Now, coming to that, okay, so I'll just write there residential status, and in that we take the first thing, that is individual. Now, as I told you, as kids we have heard na NRI, that is what do we call NRI full form? Non-resident Indian. So there is a resident Indian and there is a non-resident Indian. Now, under income tax, there are certain rules on the basis of which we decide whether the person is a resident or a non-resident. That is primary classification. Once we decide that a person is resident, और आगे जाना है to sub-classify his residential status. That we will see in some time. But before that, first let us see what are the provisions prescribed under the Income Tax Act for determining the residential status of an individual. Now this is as per section 6 and the subsection is 1. Section 6 and subsection 1. If you can remember the subsection is fine. As I told you in पहले भी बोला था, in your syllabus there is not much weightage for remembering the subsection. Okay guys, now listen. Now we come to the most important part, discussing the provisions. Everything I have given you in the notes, but I will discuss the full provision so that once you understand, you may not have to read also. Okay? Now, coming back to this academic year. As I mentioned in the previous class, you all are students of this financial year, academic year 22-23. Academic year 22-23. In fact, for you all are in 23-24. Your year is 23-24. But I mentioned in the previous class that you will have to see the income of the assessee for the previous year. For you all, for your batch. What is our previous year? Previous year is 22-23. That means your academic year is 23-24, but income tax mein we have to see the income for this period only, for your batch. Next batch mein this will become 23-24. Before your batch this was 22-23 and 21-22, sorry. And what is this? What I told you? Financial year. That means the year which will start from 1st April 22 and end on 31st March 23. Start on 1st April 22 and end on 31st March 23. So we have to see the residential status for this period, previous year 22-23, and as I mentioned for y'all, previous year 22-23 means assessment year 23-24. In the previous session we discussed previous year and assessment year. Previous year is the financial year for which you are finding out the income and the tax, and assessment year is the year which follows the previous year. I showed you the logic. previous year only when it gets over, you will be able to find out the income and the assessment of that. What is assessment? The process undertaken by the income tax department to find out whether the income calculated, loss incurred, tax paid or refund due is correct or no. That process which the income tax department undergoes, that is called as assessment. We discussed that in the previous class. Okay, so assessment will take place after the previous year gets over. So assessment year will always follow the previous year. Okay guys, now understand these rules very carefully. Sab dhyan se suno, because next 3-4 classes what I am going to do will be purely based on what I am discussing right now. The next few classes what I am going to do will be purely based on what I am discussing with you all right now. This video will be a big video. If required, I will split it into two, because today first I will discuss the provision with you all and then I will solve the first sum. But I'll go very slow because it is starting. So first sum itself will take around 45 minutes to 1 hour. In addition to explanation. Explanation में जो time लगता है वो अलग, plus another 45 minutes. So mostly I'll have to split this video in two only. Okay? Now listen. Previous year 22-23. What I told you, first primary classification, we have to identify whether the person is resident or no. Whatever I am discussing, everything is given to you in writing, but listen. So now the first thing, understand this. 1st April 22 से लेके 31st March 23. 1st April 22 से लेके 31st March 23. This is the previous year for which you are supposed to calculate the income and the residential status for this batch. My other recordings are relevant for next year also, till the time syllabus doesn't change. But direct tax ka recording is not relevant for the next year. Every year I have to do fresh recording because of change in year. So my first criteria for determining the residential status of the person is that in this period, that is 1st April 22 से लेके 31st March 23, the person has to be in India for 182 days or more. The person has to be in India for a period of 182 days or more. This is the first criteria. Understand this. For the period 1st April 22 से लेके 31st March 23 तक, the person has to be in India for a period of 182 days or more. Now listen. If he is in India for a period of 182 days or more, when I say 182 days or more, agar 182 days exactly hoga, he is treated as a resident. So if he fulfills this condition, that person will be called as a resident. If he fulfills this condition, that person will be called as a resident. Now listen. What if he doesn't fulfill? Now if he doesn't fulfill, इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि वो non-resident है. If he fulfills this condition in the year 22-23, if he is in India for 182 days or more, he is a resident. If not, then there is a second condition, alternate condition, or okay, alternate condition. What is this? Now see, understand this. Same period, 1st April 22 से लेके 31st March 23, he should be in India for a period of 60 days or more. In the current year, that is in the previous year 22-23, he should be in India for a period of 60 days or more. And remember, ये और है. This is and. In the 4 years preceding this year, मतलब ये साल नहीं, इसके पहले के 4 साल, नॉट दिस ईयर, 4 years बिफोर दैट. अभी देखो ये है 22 23, दैट मीन्स व्हाट, उसके पहले आएगा 21 22, 20 21, 19 20 and 18 19. Getting it? हैंड को थोड़ा छोटा कर दो. Sorry, I am not that great in designing. Okay, I'm not that good in designing, so थोड़ा बहुत weird लग रहा है. Okay, so 31st March 22 23, 60 days or more, and उसके पहले के 4 years. That means इसके पहले 22 23 नहीं, उसके पहले के 4, 21 22, 20 21, 19 20, 18 19. In this 4 years, he has to be in India for 365 days or more. If he fulfills both of them, इसके लिए and है, then again he becomes a resident. Getting it, guys? Understand, I am going very slow with this. I'll repeat both the provisions again. सबसे पहला primary classification, resident, non-resident. For the previous year 22-23, he is in India for 182 days or more. If the person is in India for 182 days or more, then he becomes a resident. Then he becomes a resident. If not, then don't call him a non-resident. There's another condition, alternate condition. See whether that he is fulfilling or no. वो क्या है? In the current year for your is 22-23, he should be in India for 60 days or more, and उसके पहले के 4 साल 21 22, 20 21, 19 20, 18 19, he should be in India for 365 days or more. If he fulfills this, again he becomes a resident. If he fulfills this, again he becomes a resident. That means, in order to become a resident, either fulfill this first condition or this both together. देखो, अगर वो खाली इधर 365 days plus है, but here it is 50, then you cannot say it is fulfilled. So either 182 days or more, or 60 days or more, and 365 days or more. Both of them together. If he fulfills any one of the two conditions, he becomes a resident. Understand, there are many things. This is not the final conclusion. As I told you, I am going very slow with this. Don't worry at all. Just listen to my sessions carefully, and you can watch this multiple times. This particular video is going to be open on YouTube also, so you can watch it open YouTube पे many times as you want. But आगे के videos will be private, but this will be open. Okay? So again, I'll brush up. For your current financial year, for your batch 22-23, starting from 1st April 22, ending on 31st March 23, stay in India. It should be 182 days or more. If he is there, resident. If not, see the second condition. 22-23 में 60 days instead of 182, but उसके पहले के 4 साल में 4 years before this, 21 22, 20 21, 19 20, 18 19, 365 days or more. This or this, anyone he fulfills, he becomes a resident. Now guys, listen. If he fulfills any one of the two, then we have to go one step ahead for the secondary classification, that is ordinarily or not ordinarily. That I'll come in some time. But if he does not fulfill both the conditions, then it is obvious he becomes a non-resident. If he fulfills any one of the conditions, he is a resident. But if he does not fulfill both the conditions, then he becomes a non-resident. So if he is a non-resident, the sum gets over here only. If he is a non-resident, the sum gets over here only. But now listen very carefully, guys. Again I am repeating. आज के बाद देखो मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ. If he fulfills any one, resident, we will go one step ahead for the secondary classification, which I'll come in some time. If he is not a resident, he doesn't fulfill both the conditions, then he becomes a non-resident. But guys, ये rule के लिए, especially this, not the first one, ये वाले rule के लिए, there are 4 exceptions. 4 exceptions में there is a provision that यहाँ पे even if he is not there for 60 days, there are certain exceptions where this 60 days will be extended to 182 or something else. What is that? I come now. इसमें ना earlier there were 2 exceptions only. इसमें earlier there were 2 exceptions, but last year additional 2 exceptions were added. So now from last year के batch onwards there are 4 exceptions. Again I repeat, exception is for what? For the second rule there are 4 exceptions. Even if he doesn't fulfill this, there are certain exceptions. Now what are those exceptions? Let's study one by one. 1 minute, let me change the angle. थोड़ा इसको मैं ये करता हूँ. See the exceptions. Let me change the angle of the light. Exception number 1. As I told you, 2 exceptions are existing since years. 3rd and the 4th have been added from last year. Now see, what is the first exception? If the person, you all can see that note you all have in front of you. If the person, jiska residential status we are finding out, okay? Understand this. If he is an Indian citizen, understand this. If he is an Indian citizen. Now what is the criteria of Indian citizen? There are various definitions of Indian citizen, but I'll tell you specifically from your syllabus point of view. In fact, you all are not supposed to know this. In your exam, undergrad level mein, it will be given to you in the question only whether he is an Indian citizen or no. But for your knowledge, आगे जाके मैंने important points में दिया है. Any person, okay, who is born in India, any person who is born in India on or after 26 Jan 1950, 26 Jan is a Republic Day. Remember, British छोड़ के गए थे 1947 में, इंडिपेंडेंस मिला था, लेकिन इंडिया का कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बाद में फॉर्म हुआ था. So 26 Jan 1950, on or after that, if a person is born till 1987 1st July, date is given, okay, till 1987, yeah, 1987 only. Yes, it is 1987 only. Let me, my bad, sorry, 1987 only. I'll repeat again. 26 Jan 1950, on or after that he is born till 1st July 1987. If the person is born in India, then irrespective wherever he resides, irrespective of his nationality, he will be treated as Indian citizen. This is from objective point of view or just for understanding. Again I repeat, in your syllabus they will mention whether the person is an Indian citizen or no. So if the person is an Indian citizen, understand the first exception. He is staying in India. He leaves India as a crew member of Indian ship. He leaves India as a crew member of Indian ship or for the purpose of employment. Job के लिए India छोड़ के जा रहा है. These 2 conditions. Okay? I'll repeat. Indian citizen. First exception. If a person is Indian citizen, he leaves India as a crew member of India. See, there are many people who are doing job in shipping companies. Na? 6 महीना India, 6 महीना बाहर. So if an Indian citizen leaves India as a crew member of Indian ship, then exception will apply. If he leaves for the purpose of employment, exception will apply. Now listen, ये जो मैंने बोला था 1950 to 87, that is anywhere. But today if a person is born in India, he is staying here, he is an Indian citizen only. ये जो मैंने बोला था वो, this was the extra thing. But if you are born in India and you are staying in India, you are an Indian citizen only. That one thing is common. ये जो मैंने बोला था, that is even if you are staying abroad and you are born in that period, then you will be treated as Indian citizen. As I told you, there are other criteria also, but in your syllabus, ये तो मैंने तुमको extra बताया. You all did not know that they will give you in the exam Indian citizen है कि नहीं. So now, if an Indian citizen leaves India, याद रखना, second exception में person is coming into India. यहाँ पे Indian citizen staying in India leaves India as a crew member of Indian ship or for the purpose of employment. If he falls in this category, then ये जो 60 days है ना, ये 60 days उसके लिए हो जाएगा 182. ये 60 उसके लिए हो जाएगा 182. Now guys देखो, अगर ये 182 हो गया ना, इसका जरूरत ही नहीं है. Why? Because if this is 182, automatically he fulfills the first condition. If this is 182, automatically he fulfills first condition. So the first exception is if a person is an Indian citizen staying here, leaves India for the purpose of employment outside India or as a crew member of Indian ship, this 60 days will be treated as 182. See, मैं तुमको पूरा theory explain कर रहा हूँ. Then when we go in the sum, we will go step by step. Don't worry, शायद तुमको थोड़ा बहुत boring लग सकता है, but don't make any conclusions on the basis of this big lecture, because I am covering all the aspects which are there in your syllabus. So this was, guys, the first exception. Now the second exception. First में क्या था? Indian citizen यहाँ पे रह रहा है, यहाँ से जा रहा है. Now the second is Indian citizen, you all know, or a person of Indian origin. Indian citizen, you all know. Indian origin means what? A person is said to be a person of Indian origin when he himself or his parents or grandparents or great-grandparents are born in undivided India. That means before independence. So any person, he himself or his parents, grandparents, great-grandparents are born in undivided India before independence, then that person will be said to be a person of Indian origin. So when such persons who are staying abroad, ध्यान रखना, first exception में इंडियन सिटीजन इधर है, ही स्टेइंग इन इंडिया, इंडिया से बाहर जा रहा है. सेकंड में इंडियन सिटीजन और अ पर्सन ऑफ इंडियन ओरिजिन हु इज स्टेइंग आउट इज कमिंग टू इंडिया. यहां पे इंडिया से बाहर जा रहा है, यहां पे इंडिया आ रहा है. सो इफ इट इज अ पर्सन ऑफ इंडियन सिटीजन, he is an Indian citizen, sorry, or a person of Indian origin, again this 60 will become 182. And again the same thing, if I say this is 182, then in that case this second part doesn't apply, because अगर ये 182 है, automatically मेरा first condition satisfied हो गया. Got it? So these are the two major exceptions. These exceptions are there since years. Actually जब से मैं ये फील्ड में आया हूँ, last 20 years से these are the exceptions. उसके पहले क्या था मुझे भी नहीं पता, but last 18 to 20 years these are the exceptions. Now, as I mentioned, last year, you are the second batch. Last year they have added two more exceptions. They have added two more exceptions. Now इसके sums, third और fourth exception के sums है ही नहीं, but towards the end I'll make one or two basic sums, or in between I'll just make one or two small sums, so that we'll try to cover all the exceptions. In my sums, first, second exception, there are a couple of sums each, and I'll try to make small sums on the third and the fourth exception also. Now listen, what is the third and the fourth exception? Again, देखो उधर first page पे दिया है, third point. A person, same thing, same criteria. A person who is an Indian citizen, okay, or a person of Indian origin, same thing. Person of Indian citizen or a person of Indian origin whose total income, understand this, whose total income other than foreign income, a person of Indian citizen or Indian origin who's outside is coming in India, if his total income other than foreign income is 15 lakhs or more, is देखो उधर 15 lakhs or more exceed हो रहा है, then in that case ये जो 60 days है यहां पे थोड़ा चेंज होगा, this 60 days becomes 120 days. This 60 days becomes 120 days. Now what will happen? अगर ये 120 है तो ये relevant हो जाएगा. Previous two केस में क्या था? 182 था. Automatically it becomes the first condition. But यहाँ पे if this is the case, person of Indian citizen or a person of Indian origin, okay, if his total income other than foreign income is 15 lakhs or more, then this 60 will be referred as 120. Foreign income का definition भी दिया है, I'll come to that point also. So this was the third. See देखो उधर ही page number 4 पे, an Indian citizen or a person of Indian origin who being outside India comes on a visit to India during the previous year having a total income other than income from foreign sources exceeding 15 lakhs. 15 lakhs is ज़्यादा, then this 60 will be treated as 120. Got it? There is no such sum currently given by the authors. I have not seen, आगे जाके देखना पड़ेगा है कि नहीं, but अगर है तो this will be the exception. And अगर they ask you the sum, I'll tell you honestly, it will be very simple because what syllabus you all are having in undergrad level is pure basic. Okay? Now see the fourth exception. Very, very simple. See the next page. This second and the third was for Indian citizen and Indian origin. Fourth is again only for Indian citizen. Abhi dekho, same thing. If a person is an Indian citizen, okay, then if he has income more than 15 lakhs other than foreign income and he is not paying tax in any other country, he is not paying tax in any other country, then he will be deemed to be a resident in India. Deemed matlab, even though he is not a resident, he will be assumed to be a resident in India. That we will study in the second part of this chapter. Next page pe aa jao, see the fourth point, what it says. An individual being an Indian citizen having total income again other than foreign income exceeding 15 lakh during the previous year would be deemed to be a resident in India in that previous year if he is not liable to pay tax in any other country or a territory by region of his domicile or residence or any other reason. Now see what they say. However, this provision will not apply in case of an individual who is a resident in the previous year. Because अगर resident है, there is no question of exception only. Exception कभी आएगा? When he is a non-resident. अगर वो resident है, criteria fulfill कर रहा है, there is no question of exception only. So this is just a formality. Got it, guys? So these are the four exceptions. And again I am repeating, those who are getting confused by listening, don't worry at all, confused mat ho, just listen. When I start the sums, I will go part by part. First sum में मैं कोई भी exception को नहीं छेड़ूंगा. I will not touch any exception. But because this is the starting of video, I am explaining everything together. Got it, guys? So this was primary classification. I will continue with secondary, but first let me brush up with this. See here, two major rules for primary classification of resident. Current year 1st April 22-23, he should be in India for a period of 182 days or more. If he is, he becomes a resident. If not, don't assume non-resident. See the second condition. 22-23 financial year, current year, he should be in India for 60 days or more, and the 4 years preceding the previous year 22-23, he should be in India for 365 days or more. If he fulfills this or these two, any one of the two, he becomes a resident. And if he doesn't fulfill, he becomes a non-resident. If he is a non-resident, the sum gets over here only. But if he is a resident, we have to go further. That I will now come in the next 5 minutes. Now listen, if he doesn't fulfill, then before you jump to any conclusion, you have to first see whether the person जिसका हम लोग residential status find out कर रहे, whether he is falling in the 4 exceptions or no. Again I'll brush up the 4 exceptions. सुनो ध्यान से. Again I am repeating. सुन लो. ध्यान देना when we come to the relevant sum of exception. First exception. A person who is an Indian citizen. Indian citizen मतलब जो यहाँ पे born हुआ, यहाँ पे रह रहा है, वो तो Indian citizen है ही. And if a person is born in India on or after 26 Jan 1950 but before July 87, he is also to be treated as Indian citizen irrespective wherever he stays. If that person, here he is for this year, and he leaves India as a crew member of an Indian ship or for purpose of employment, then in that case this 60 will become 182. Okay? When we come to the sums of exception और detail में मैं जाऊंगा. क्या था? Indian citizen, he is here in India. India से निकल के बाहर जा रहा है. Now see the second one. Indian citizen or a person of Indian origin. A person is said to be a person of Indian origin where he himself, his parents, grandparents or great-grandparents are born in undivided India. Undivided India means before independence. So if a person is an Indian citizen or a person of Indian origin, they are outside, they come to India for a visit, then in that case again this 60 will be referred as 182. This 60 will be referred as 182. Then third one, if a person is Indian citizen or a person of Indian origin, if he has an income of 15 lakhs other than foreign income, then in that case this 60 will be treated as 120. Just keep this in mind. When I come to the sums on exceptions, that time I'll see in detail. And the last wala, Indian citizen, if he is not paying, same criteria of income other than foreign income 15 lakhs or more, and if he is not paying tax in any other country other than India, then he will be deemed to be a resident. Deemed to be resident matlab, he will be assumed to be a resident in India. Exceptions ke sum will come at a later stage. Before that, after doing this primary classification, I will go into secondary classification. What is secondary? Primary में अगर conclusion आया resident with or without exceptions, I will go for secondary classification, classifying further into ordinarily and not ordinarily. And if the conclusion is non-resident with exception, sum gets over there only. So understand, if the conclusion is he is a non-resident, sum udhar hi khatam. But if he is a resident, then we have to go one step ahead to classify ordinarily and not ordinarily. Now what is that? The board is full. I'll just take this picture, I'll just be it back, and then we will discuss in detail the secondary classification. Okay, I'll just be back, guys. primary classification. Now, as I told you, we go for secondary classification. Now see, again I repeat, if the conclusion of what we discussed till now was non-resident, the sum gets over there only. But if the conclusion, I'll just take it a little bit here. If the conclusion is resident, if the conclusion is that the person is a resident, then we will further classify as ordinarily resident and or not ordinarily resident. This we call it as ROR and this we call it as RNOR. Both are resident only, but this will be ordinarily resident and this will be not ordinary. You know why? Second part में हम लोग करेंगे. ROR pays the highest tax, followed by NOR, and then followed by non-resident. See why this chapter is very important. Non-resident सबसे कम tax भरेगा यहाँ. उसका reason क्या है? Because he is paying tax in other countries also. Ordinary resident will pay the tax highest on his incomes. This fellow will be second highest, and the least will be non-resident. This we will see in detail when we study the second part of this chapter, scope of total income. But उसके पहले we have to see 4-5 lectures, maybe another 6-7 lectures for this particular part of residential status. Okay, so if a person is resident, we have to go one step ahead, do the secondary classification, classify a resident into ordinary resident and not ordinarily resident. Ordinarily resident and not ordinary. Now see, इसका क्या rules है? Now guys listen up. The rules for this classification, ROR or NOR, can be done in two ways. I don't know what your college has done, but I am sticking to one which is easier. Colleges don't have objection, I know that. University says whatever you are comfortable, do. So, whichever way you do, finally the answer has to be the same. So now, understand this classification. And again I am repeating, those who have not yet followed the पहले का explanation, even if you have followed 75% is fine. इसको मत देखो, pause कर दो video, go back, see as many times you want, and then you come back, so this will become easier. Because till the time you do not classify the person as a resident, you cannot do this. Okay? Now see, what are the rules for secondary classification? What are the rules for secondary classification? Now see, what are the two classifications I told you? Secondary में, ordinarily and not ordinary. So what I do, I will start with NOR. I will start with NOR, that is not ordinarily resident. Now listen, इसका क्या rules है? There are two rules for this. Again you have to fulfill that. Now listen very carefully. First rule, हमारा current financial year क्या है? Previous year for your batch. (2022-23). Our current year is 2022-23. Okay, this is my current year. So now what you have to do? ये साल में क्या है वो तो हमने देख लिया. Now, if I want to classify a person as not ordinary resident, then you see that 10 years, 10 साल, not this, इसके पहले के 10 years preceding the previous year 22-23. Now be careful. 22-23 के पहले के 10 साल, आराम से देखो step by step. 22 23 के पहले क्या आएगा? 21 22. इसके पहले के 10 साल 21 22 के पहले क्या आएगा? 20 21. इसके पहले क्या आएगा? 19 20. इसके पहले 18 19. अंडरस्टैंड? इसके पहले 17 18. इसके पहले 16 17. इसके पहले 15 16. देखो कितना हो रहा है? 3 3 6 7. और आगे 16 17 15 16. How many? 3 3 6 3 9. And now the last 15. So I have to take 10 years. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. 10 years preceding the previous year 22 23. Now see, what is the provision? If I want to classify a resident as not ordinarily, I am going with a different way. See, 10 years before the previous year. In this 10 years, understand this, the person has to be a non-resident in at least 9 years. That means 2022-23 के पहले के जो 10 years है, 2022-23 के पहले के जो 10 years है, out of those 10 years he has to be a non-resident in 9 years. If he is a non-resident in 9 years, then then he will be classified as not ordinarily resident. I repeat, not the current year. Current year तो देख लिया हमने for primary classification. Current year के पहले के 10 years में, if he is a non-resident in at least 9 years, he will be treated as not ordinarily resident. Okay? Now understand. What if he is not a non-resident in 9 years? Then don't assume ROR here only. Then there is a second condition. Second condition क्या बोलता है? उसमें ना you just have to take the 7 years. First condition में 10 years लेना है before 22-23 and identify the person as non-resident in 9 years. If he is a non-resident in 9 years, he becomes NOR. If not, then see the second condition. 7 years preceding the previous year 22-23. 8, 9, 10 years, खाली 7 years लेना है. His stay in India should be 729 days or less. His stay in India should be 729 days or less. If he doesn't fulfill this and last 7 years before 22-23 he is in India for 729 days or less, then again he becomes a not ordinarily resident. Again he becomes a not ordinarily resident. Clear with this, guys? Now ये fulfill करेगा not ordinarily resident, ये fulfill करेगा not ordinary resident. Anyone. What if he doesn't fulfill both? If he or she doesn't fulfill this, if he or she doesn't fulfill this, then in that case the person becomes a ordinarily resident. So in that case he becomes a resident and ordinarily resident. I repeat, resident का part तो हो गया. For a person to be determined as not ordinarily resident, he should be a non-resident in at least 9 years out of the 10 years preceding 22-23. If he is, then he becomes a not ordinarily resident. If not, check the second rule. In the previous 7 years, preceding this year, ये साल नहीं, इसके पहले के 7 years, he should be in India for 729 days or less. If he fulfills, again he becomes not ordinarily resident. And in case he doesn't fulfill both, then he will be classified as ordinarily resident. That means resident but ordinarily resident. ये क्या था? Resident but not ordinarily. दोनों में difference क्या है? This guy, ordinarily resident, will pay tax on highest amount of income, and not ordinary will pay less. There are certain income जो इसको tax होगा और इसको tax नहीं होगा. Which are those income? That we will see in the second part of this chapter. Got it? And if he doesn't fulfill both the conditions, as I told you, he is ordinarily resident. So guys, these were the basic rules connected with residential status. Okay, now listen. We are doing residential status of individuals. I told you the criteria for Indian citizen, Indian origin. देखो मैंने उस second page पे important points दिए हैं. Now ध्यान रखना. Basic things है, but you have to understand this for objective also and sums also. Even part stay in India will be treated as stay in India. Suppose a person is there, he leaves today, India से बाहर जा रहा है, वो इंडिया में 5 मिनट भी रहेगा ना, his stay will be counted as stay in India. Other thing, it is not necessary that he has to stay at one place. He is in India for 200 days. 50 दिन बॉम्बे में है, मुंबई में, 50 दिन he is in Bangalore, 50 days in Pune, 50 days in Kolkata. It's fine. We have to see the total stay in India. We have to see the total stay in India, wherever he is in any part of India. Next thing, the stay need not be continuous stay. मतलब अगर वो 200 दिन है, जरूरी नहीं है कि he has to be at a stroke for 200 days. He can be here for 25 days, again go back to his country, again come back, again go back, again come back. जितने दिन इंडिया था वो दिन काउंट करने हैं. Whether वो continuous है या part है, doesn't make a difference. So his stay has to be counted. Not necessary it has to be at a stroke or he has to be there consistently at one place. Any place in India, his days will be counted. Even if he is there in India for few minutes, that particular day will be counted. And the day when the person arrives, that day will be treated as a day in India. And when he departs, the day of departure also will be treated as day in India. So the day of arrival will be treated as a day in India, and the day of departure will also be treated as day in India. अभी देखो, see the 5th page, मैंने सब जो भी discuss किया है, I have given in those 6 points. Just have a glance. Whatever I have discussed, starting में criteria for Indian citizen, Indian origin, continuous stay, not necessary being at same place, day of arrival, day of departure, all these points have to be kept in mind. You can just have a glance at 6 points of page number 5. What I discussed, same thing has been repeated. So guys, this was in-depth explanation of provisions for residential status of individual. As I told you, in your syllabus you have HUF and individuals के sums, and other statuses, it is just for theory purpose. That I will do with you after I finish residential status of an individual. Got it guys? Now see, the video has become too long. I want to take one sum and I am taking that sum, but that sum I will be taking in the next video. If required, I will merge both the videos आके जाके, but ये थोड़ा बड़ा हो गया है, तो I will have to disconnect and do the recording of the first sum in the next video. So I am coming back in the next video with the first sum, and understand this, as I told you, मैं कोई भी exception नहीं ले रहा हूँ. ये वीडियो ध्यान से देखो before you come to the first sum. 100% provision याद नहीं रहा, don't worry. चाहिए तो exceptions temporary भूल जाओ. Just for the first sum, forget the exceptions. Just keep in mind primary rules of residence. First two, विदाउट एक्सेप्शन, एंड इसको ध्यान रखो, फर्स्ट सम तुमको आ जाएगा. So you temporarily you can ignore the 4 exceptions as far as the first sum is concerned. Okay guys, I'll be back in the next video, and next video mein I will just solve question number 1 and I will tell you how to write systematic in the exam if it is asked as a 15 mark ka sum. Because agar ye sum 15 mark ka aaya, you just cannot write it in a short way. I'll give you a detailed explanation how to write it. Okay, so I'll be back in the next video with solving of question number 1 from our sheet. Okay guys, as mentioned, we take the first question. Understand this very carefully. As I told you, there are no exceptions. I'm making it very simple for you all. This will be the foundation for the remaining sums. Okay, and as I told you, I'll be giving you in-depth explanation. I'll be dictating. थोड़ा बोरिंग लगेगा, बट मुझे याद करोगे एग्जाम के टाइम पे. ओके, लेट्स सी. क्वेश्चन नंबर 1. क्वेश्चन 2 लाइन का है, लेकिन सोल्यूशन जाएगा 2 पेज में. ओके, लेट्स सी. शुभ केम टू इंडिया फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम on 1st July 16 and has been staying in India since then. What is his residential status for assessment year 23-24? As I told you, in your syllabus, you have assessment year 23-24, which is our current financial year or the current previous year 2022-23, applicable for your batch only. Okay, now see, first step, what I told you, primary classification. First, we have to identify the person as a resident or a non-resident. We have to identify a person as a resident or a non-resident. तो क्या करना है उसके पहले? The first condition for the previous year 22-23, that is 1st April 2022-23 से लेके 31st March 23. Previous year 22-23, that is 1st April 2022 से लेके 31st March 23, he should be in India for a period of 182 days or more. Okay, I'll repeat. Current financial year 2022-23, which is applicable for your batch, that is 1st April 2022 से लेके 31st March 2023, he should be in India for a period of 182 days or more. If he is, then he becomes a resident. Okay, abhi see the situation. Now, see the situation in the sum. Shubh came to India for the first time on 1st July 16. First time India में आया 1st July 2016. उसके बाद can I say is in India only? That means 1st April 22 से लेके 31st March 23 तक, can I say entire year he is in India for 365 days. Entire year he is in India for 365 days. Correct ना? That है ना? अगर ये 24 रहेगा, 16, 20, 24, you all know that. Leap year है, तो it will be 366. Anything which is divided by 4, you get the exact calci में answer. It is leap year. अभी देखो, ये देखना, 2023 को 4 से divide करो, you will get the answer in points. 2024 को 4 से divide करो, you will get exact answer. तो वो leap year हो गया. For your batch, year ending 31st March 16, year ending 31st March 20, year ending 31st March, हाँ बस इतना ही, 16 and 20. 24 तो तुम्हारे लिए applicable ही नहीं है. So 31st March 16 and 31st March 20, these will be 2 leap years where it will be 366. Anyway, it doesn't affect because 182 days के ऊपर है. So guys देखो, first answer मिल गया. 22-23, entire year he is in India for 365 days. which is more than 182, so he is a resident. अभी देखो फर्स्ट कंडीशन फुलफिल हो गया तो सेकेंड का जरूरत ही नहीं है, बिकॉज ही हैज टू फुलफिल एनीवन. अगर ये फुलफिल नहीं होता we would have gone for the second condition 60 days in the current year and उसके पहले के 4 years में 365, but that is not required only because he fulfills the first condition. Okay, now see ये लिखना है, कैसे लिखोगे? See guys, you have to see the weightage of the question. अगर 15 मार्क का फुल फ्लैग सम है, you will write the way I am going to tell you all, and if it's a 7-8 mark sum, shortcut में. But since this being the first sum, I will make you write in depth explanation के साथ. कैसे स्टार्ट करोगे? सबसे पहले क्या करना है? You have to tell, I am dictating. शुभ के लिए criteria for residents. We have to write both the rules. 182 days or more, or 60 days plus 365 days. Then we have to see the situation of the current sum. Give the conclusion, resident, non-resident, and then go for the second part. Okay? Now start writing. I am dictating. Again I am repeating. थोड़ा तुमको boring लगेगा, but मुझे एग्जाम के टाइम पे याद करोगे और मुझे नेक्स्ट सम्स में याद करोगे, because this we have done in detail. Okay? Again repeating. थोड़ा boring लगेगा, but लिखो. Start writing. This is the way you will write if it is a full-fledged 15 mark का sum. लिखो. In order to become a resident in India, in order to become a resident in India for assessment year 2023-24, in order to become a resident in India for assessment year 2023-24, Mr. Shub has to fulfill any one of the following conditions. Mr. Shub has to fulfill any one of the following conditions. Okay? नीचे लिखो. First, he should be in India. He should be in India for the previous year. He should be in India for the previous year 2022-23. He should be in India for the previous year 2022-23 for a period of 182 days or more. For a period of 182 days or more. Okay, this was the first condition. Now what you do? Next line, center में ऐसे box करके लिखो और. Okay, center में box करके और. Now see the second rule. लिखो. Next line में और करके उसके बाद वाले line में write. He or second. He should be in India. He should be in India during the previous year 22-23. He should be in India during the previous year 22-23 for a period of 60 days or more. For a period of 60 days or more, and during the 4 years, preceding the previous year 22-23, during the 4 years preceding the previous year 22-23, his total stay in India should be 365 days or more. His total stay in India should be 365 days or more. Okay, he has to fulfill any one of the conditions. This is the way you will write. Okay, now listen. Before we go to the secondary classification, ये तुमने क्या किया? The person who is correcting the paper, उसको बताया है कि basic residential test के क्या rules है. Now, apply the rules for the current sum. Already we discussed. First rule fulfill हो रहा है, first condition fulfill हो रहा है, so there is no need to see the second one. But हमने लिखा है आंसर में. So now we will give the conclusion of the first part. This is not the final conclusion because ये resident है. अगर non-resident होता, sum खत्म. Okay, now give the conclusion for the first part. Write in the next part. Next para में लिखो. This conclusion. During the previous year 22-23, during the previous year 22-23, S.Y.B.A.F is in India. S.Y.B.A.F is in India for entire year. S.Y.B.A.F is in India for the entire year, that is 365 days. Entire year, that is 365 days. That is more than 182 days. That is more than 182 days. Therefore, Mr. S.Y.B.A.F, therefore, Mr. S.Y.B.A.F fulfills, therefore, Mr. S.Y.B.A.F fulfills the first condition. Mr. S.Y.B.A.F fulfills the first condition of becoming a resident, fulfills the first condition of becoming a resident, and therefore Mr. S.Y.B.A.F and therefore Mr. S.Y.B.A.F for assessment year AY, assessment year 23-24, assessment year 23-24 will be a, put in inverted commas, resident, will be a resident. Got it, guys? This is the way you write. Don't worry, exam में तुमको एक ही समान है. So अगर 15 मार्क का सम है, full fledged लिखना है, and if it is 7-8 mark का sum कैसे लिखना है, that we'll study in the, that I'll show you how to write in the next classes. Got it? Again I repeat. अगर answer non-resident होता, sum was over. Now, what will happen? Now see guys, secondary classification. Resident आ गया. Again I'll repeat. Non-resident question is over. अगर resident, then we have to go one step ahead to find out whether he is ordinarily resident or not ordinarily resident. Now what I told you, uske liye first what we have to do, what is our current previous year? My current previous year is 22-23. Okay, not this year. इसके पहले के 10 years देखने, not this year, इसके पहले के 10 years, 21-22, 20-21, 19-20, 18-19, 17-18, 16-17, 15-16, 14-15. Let's see. 3, 6, 2, 8. Okay, 21-22, 20-21, 19-20, 18-19, 17-18, 16-17, 15-16, 13-14. कितने हो गए? 3 and 3, 6 and 3. And this will be 12, 13. Okay? 20, 22, 20, 19, 18, 17, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This will be standard for all the sums. Getting it? So, I have to see the status of 10 years preceding the previous year 22-23. Dictating part I will do later on. First let us get the conclusion. Then I dictate. Uske baad, after you write my dictation, then you copy down this in the form of working note. Okay guys, now listen very carefully. Kaise karoge? Very very simple. Don't worry. See here. Question में क्या बोला? Shub came to India first time when? 1st July 16. 1st July 16. Now see. 16 इधर दो जगह पे है. 16, 17, 15, 16. You all know, you all have financial year. 15, 16 gets over on 31st March. 15, 16 gets over on 31st March. 15, 16 gets over on 31st March. That means, can I say July 16 will be in 16, 17? So see, यहाँ पे देखो. First time India में यहाँ पे आया. He came to India for the first time here, and यहाँ से लेके यहाँ तक he is in India. 16, 17 में पहली बार इंडिया आया. That means, can I say उसके पहले इंडिया में था ही नहीं. So what I'll do, this is number of days. 0 days, 0 days, 0 days, 0 days. एक भी दिन इंडिया में नहीं है. एक भी दिन इंडिया में नहीं है तो 0, 0, 0. Now see, 16, 17 में पहली बार आया. When? 1st July. 16, 17 starts on 1st April. April, May, June. 3 months he was not there. So what I'll do, I'll make it simple. Side पे bracket. 365 are the days for the full year. 365 are the days for the full year. उसमें से माइनस करो अप्रैल 30, माइनस करो मई 31, माइनस करो जून 30. So 365, 30, 30, 91. So that gives you 274. Let me check once again. 365 minus 30 minus 31 minus, yeah, 274. So he was in India for 274 days. He was in India for 274 days. Otherwise, you know क्या है? ऐसे नहीं करना है ना. He came to India for 1st July. 1st July से लेके 31st March काउंट करो. Year ends on 31st March. July 31 plus August 31 plus September 30 plus October 31, November 30, December 31, Jan 31, February, not a leap year, 28, March 30. वो सबको ऐड करो, आंसर विल बी 274. और जो मैंने किया 365 डेज इन अ ईयर, अप्रैल मई जून नहीं था, तो 365 में से जो 3 मंथ्स वो नहीं था वो माइनस करो, यू गेट 274. विच एवर वी आर कंफर्टेबल डू. या तो ऑल 9 मंथ्स का स्टे को ऐड करो और 365 में से जो पीरियड में नहीं है माइनस करो. योर आंसर हैज टू बी 274. गॉट इट. नाउ सी गाइस, यहां पे पहली बार इंडिया आया, उसके बाद इंडिया में ही था. सो कैन आई से 17, 18 फुल ईयर 365, 18, 19 full year 365, 19, 20 what I told you ends on 19, 20, so 366, 20, 21 365, 21, 22 365. Getting it. So देखो, every year first 5 years full year 274 and बाकी में नहीं है according to the information given in the question. Got it guys? Now listen. Now what we will do. Now let's take the residential status of each year. What is the rule? First rule of not ordinarily resident. First rule of not ordinary. ये 10 में से 9 years में he should be a non-resident. Let's check. देखो कैसे करोगे. फर्स्ट ईयर इंडिया में कितने दिन का? 365. मोर देन 182 रेसिडेंट. 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 अभी देखो 0 डेज, 182 से भी कम है और 60 भी नहीं है, तो ये चारों साल में एक भी दिन नहीं था. तो एनआर 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 एनआर. गेटिंग इट? सो वी गॉट ऑल द 10 years का रेसिडेंशियल स्टेटस. लास्ट 4 में नॉन रेसिडेंट, फर्स्ट 6 में रेसिडेंट. Getting it? You have to see the situation in each and every year. मैंने 10 सम बनाए, खुद के सम्स है. Those 10 sums covers all the variety. But as I told you, exceptions के लिए एक दो मैं और ऐड कर सकता हूँ. But the sums what I have made now, it covers almost all the provisions with variations in exceptions. Clear, guys? So this is the way you have to do. Now listen. First condition, not ordinarily resident. फर्स्ट कंडीशन, नॉट ऑर्डिनरीली रेसिडेंट. क्या है उसके लिए? आउट ऑफ दिस 10 एटलीस्ट 9 में ही शुड बी अ नॉन रेसिडेंट. आउट ऑफ 10 9 में ही शुड बी अ नॉन रेसिडेंट. चेक करो. 1 2 3 4 आर खाली 4 है. सो he is a non-resident only in 4 years, not in 9 years. So can I say he doesn't fulfill the first condition? Getting it? I'm going very slow. And don't worry, as I told you, ये video भी YouTube पे open रहेगा. You can watch any number of times, and those who have enrolled with me, app maybe you have many views for this particular video. So I'll repeat. 10 years preceding the previous year 22-23, he is a non-resident in 4 years, so he does not fulfill the first condition of becoming NOR. उसमें 9 होना चाहिए. No problem. Don't jump to conclusion. First condition fulfill नहीं हुआ, take the second one. Second one में क्या देखना है? 7 years देखना है. You can take this as first also, no problem. Second में क्या देखना है? You have to see 7 years. Now what you have to do? Last 3 नहीं देखने. 7 years में what is the condition? His stay in India should be 729 days or less. His stay in India should be 729 days or less. देखो 7 years में वेरी सिंपल. फर्स्ट 2 ईयर ही देखो, 365. फर्स्ट 2 years में only it is gone above 729. So can I see doesn't fulfill the first condition? Getting it? Sorry, second condition. I'll repeat. Second condition क्या है? 7 years before 22-23. 22-23 नहीं, उसके पहले के 7 years preceding 729 days or less. If you count these two, उधर ही तुम्हारा 729 के ऊपर हो गया. So he also does not fulfill the second condition of becoming NOR, not ordinary resident. अभी देखो, NOR का फर्स्ट कंडीशन नॉट फुलफिल्ड, NOR का second condition not fulfilled. He doesn't fulfill both the conditions of becoming a not ordinarily resident. तो इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? If he doesn't fulfill both the condition of becoming a not ordinarily resident, he will be classified as a resident but ordinarily resident. He doesn't fulfill both the conditions of becoming not ordinarily resident, therefore he will be classified as a resident but ordinarily resident. Got it, guys? This is the way you are supposed to do. Now see, इसको pending रखो. Let me dictate. We'll write the conclusion, and then anyway picture आएगा. Then you can copy down after I give you all the conclusion. Again repeating, थोड़ा लिखना पड़ेगा, but as I told you, मुझे याद करोगे. Okay? Now I dictated the first part. Now take the second part. Okay? Start writing. Since Mr. Shuk, next para. Since Mr. Shuk for assessment year 23-24, since Mr. Shuk for assessment year 23-24 is a resident, we have to further classify whether he is a ordinarily resident, or a not ordinarily resident, whether he is a ordinarily resident or not ordinarily resident. Okay? Now as I told you, I'll go as per my way. Likho. Next part, next line. In order to become a not ordinarily resident, Mr. Shuk has to fulfill any one of the conditions given below. Mr. Shuk has to fulfill any one of the conditions given below. Okay? Right. First, during the 10 years preceding the previous year 22-23, during the 10 years preceding the previous year 22-23, he should be a non-resident. In at least 9 years. He should be a non-resident in at least 9 years. Now next line again लिखो, center में capital or, second provision, second alternate one, or during the 7 years preceding the previous year 22-23, during the 7 years preceding the previous year 22-23, he should be in India. For a period of 729 days or less. He should be in India for a period of 729 days or less. 729 days or less. Okay? Now guys, listen. Now we will write the conclusion what we have calculated here. Uske baad, after I finish giving you all the conclusion, you all copy this down. Okay? Now the conclusion. Likho next paragraph. During the 10 years preceding the previous year 22-23, during the 10 years preceding the previous year 22-23, Shuk is a non-resident. In only 4 years. Shuk is a non-resident in only 4 years. That is, less than 9 years. That is less than 9 years. Therefore, he does not fulfill. Therefore, he does not fulfill the first condition. Therefore, he does not fulfill the first condition of becoming. He does not fulfill the first condition of becoming a not ordinarily resident. Does not fulfill the first condition of becoming a not ordinarily resident. First condition of becoming a not ordinarily resident. Okay, continue. Next line. During the 7 years, preceding the previous year 22-23, during the 7 years preceding the previous year 22-23, Mr. Shub is in India. Mr. Shub is in India for more than 729 days. For more than 729 days. Therefore, he also does not fulfill. Therefore, he also does not fulfill the second condition. He also does not fulfill the second condition of becoming a not ordinarily resident. Second condition of becoming a not ordinarily resident. Okay? Now see. NOR ka both the condition not fulfilled. So now the final conclusion R. Dekho. Next paragraph. Final conclusion. Okay, ho gaya. See, I am dictating all the tumko boring lagega, but this is in your benefit. Now write the final conclusion. Next paragraph. The final conclusion. Since Mr. Shub does not fulfill, since Mr. Shub does not fulfill both the conditions, since Mr. Shub does not fulfill both the conditions of becoming a not ordinarily resident, since Mr. Shub does not fulfill both the conditions of becoming a not ordinarily resident, Mr. Shub for assessment year 2023-24, Mr. Shub for assessment year 2023-24, put it inverted commas, will be a put in inverted commas resident but ordinarily resident. Resident but ordinarily resident. That is what we call it as ROR. Okay? Since it does not fulfill both the condition of not ordinary resident, Mr. Shub for assessment year 23-24 will be a resident but ordinarily resident. This is the sum is what about? 15 marks ka sum you will write the way I have told you. 7-8 mark ka sum rahega. Directly you can write the conclusion after showing the working, which we will see in the next class. Now after this, you all can copy this down. Pura copy kar lena. Anyway, picture will come below the video. Even if not, you can just pause it and copy down whatever way you're comfortable. So guys, we have 2 long sessions for this chapter. Starting of this chapter, both the videos previous and this together has gone for almost 1 hour 45 minutes. But then the concept has been clear. Got it, guys? So this was the understanding of residential status of individual. Being the first sum, I'll wind up here, and before we meet in the next class, please see to it that you all have revised this sum as well as you all have revised the provisions of the previous video. Of course, without that you can't do this. So see to it that before we meet in the next class, you all are thorough with both the videos. That's it, guys. We'll continue in the next class with further sums. Next class I should be able to manage at least 2 sums, maybe more, but at least 2 sums, so I feel I should manage. यहाँ पे तो क्या first sum था, I have to go very slow, again brush up the provisions. Next time when you all also see the video, you all will come with a positive mindset and the basic knowledge of residential status, so you all can also proceed in a faster mode. Okay, that's it, guys. See you all in the next class. Till then, take care, guys.